I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Sergeant Puma, Cat Crab Lobster, and Duck Machine. Thank you very much for the support. It is much appreciated. Quantity is its own quality, written by Damascus Seraph. Most galactic species follow quality. Life most often forming around small rocky planets or on moons of gas giants. Thus, the low gravity and limited resources forced all sentient life in the galaxy to evolve for quality. Make each individual the best it can be as to not waste the resources. Making too many would make the gene pool too diluted and with bad traits, and make competition for the limited resources of the sentient species homeworlds. Thus has been the rule. The larger and more expansive something is, the better it obviously became. That was a solid fact. Until humanity appeared. In a galaxy of dozen-meter-tall giants, these tiny humans were but ants to such venerable species. A single human would live and die before one would reach adulthood, and to a galactic community so used to seeing similarly large and ancient species, this was new. Home on a large planet with twice the gravity of even the densest species homeworlds, lush with resources and water, humanity discovered the other side of the quality coin, and it did not take long for the galaxy to find out. The Lbry, one of the oldest and largest species in the galaxy, inhabiting a few hundred moons and small planets, was one of the most powerful races, controlling galactic affairs on their side of the galaxy for untold millennia. Their fleet contained the largest ships and the most well-armed and well-trained crews. Centuries of training into each individual made them masters. And when this upstart species began to encroach on their territory, claiming their systems and colonizing them in such a rapid pace, it had been only 2 centuries after humanity was discovered to the galaxy, and here they were, nipping at the heels of the great Lbry. They could not show weakness to the galaxy. Their pride and their integrity was on the line, as letting this puny species take what's theirs could embolden their rivals to challenge them. They could not have that, and thus the call to war was announced. The fleet left the dockyards, the finest ships in the galaxy. Dozens of kilometers long, they could be mistaken for spaceports for the lowly humans. Even the largest of their ships barely broke a kilometer long. At first, the invasion was swift. The Grand Fleet, made up of thousands of ships, began recapturing the territory stolen by the humans. What colonies could be established were either evacuated or simply destroyed, shelved from orbit as the gravity was too strong for even the Lbry. And what tiny defenses the planets could muster could barely scratch the shields of the Grand Fleet. Unfortunately for the humans, their homeworld of Terra lay just on the border of Lbry territory, and while they expanded outwards in all directions, Terra was but a short distance from the start of the invasion. By the 15th Terran year, the Grand Fleet had finally arrived at the homeworld, jumping into the system to destroy their planet and teach them a valuable lesson to never challenge the Lbry. The first thing the Admiral of the Grand Fleet, the 5 millennia young Admiral with centuries of experience, saw was hundreds of thousands of puny ships. Dozens more jumping into the system from various points every second. Most of the ships were unpainted, built haphazardly by the Lbry standards, and to no doubt create a swarm of flies to attempt to stop the Grand Fleet. No matter. While destroying every ship will take time, the weapons wouldn't be able to damage even the smallest ship in the Grand Fleet. The Admiral signaling the attack as the main batteries of the energy weapons surged forth, vaporizing a dozen ships clustered together, causing the human armada to scatter like rats, surging forth towards the Grand Fleet as each second a ship is blasted and vaporized by the Veracian's deadly accurate weapons. The shields begin to flicker as a storm of shrapnel from the human ships begins to pound against the shields of each ship. as the human fleet swarms around the Grand Fleet like flies to a piece of meat. The crew, trained to fight massive ships in incomprehensible ranges, are baffled by the strategy. Having no need to aim, as the cloud of ships ensure that even a blind fire will destroy a couple ships, even as quite nimble Terran ships move around erratically to avoid the large guns. The Admiral watches the statistics of his ships and looks uncomfortable, his crew blasting away as fast as they can, while their shields continue to drain steadily. The shields having been designed to take massive, sudden blasts of energy, then having time to recharge. But with the constant assault of never-ending fire from the primitive energy weapons, missiles, and coil guns, the shields have no chance to recharge. It has been only a few days, and the shields are already at half strength. The Admiral already ordered the engines to cease functioning in order to route more power to the shields, but they continue to drain. And no matter how many ships are vaporized, destroyed, or incapacitated, there are far too many, and more continue to come from presumably the rest of human space. Half of the ships do not appear to even be military. Scans show that they are retrofitted freighters and transports. But he is the Admiral of the Grand Fleet. He can and will bring victory. But with each Terran day, the shields drain more and more and more. The Terrans grow wise as the firing arcs of their weapons and begin to avoid them, traveling in massive packs and blind spots of ships, only stopping to retreat to their homeworld to restock on supplies and ammunition. But the constant barrage drains every ship's shields. Then a signal comes. The smallest ship in the fleet and the oldest, the Great Leap's shields, are finally drained, and the hull begins to get blasted away by the weapons of the Terrans. Other ships in the Grand Fleet attempt to focus fire to assist the ancient vessel, but each shot gains less and less kills as the Terran nimbly dodge and avoid the traversal of the large and slow guns. The crew of the other ships can only watch in horror as the ship is gutted from every single angle as hundreds of ships scramble from all over to attack the now unshielded ship. Dozens of crew quarters are breached and the atmosphere vents. Cameras are turned off to avoid crews viewing their fellow crew flying off to the void to be torn apart by the weapons of the Terrans. By the 60th day of the battle, the first ship in the Grand Fleet is naught but scrap metal, a floating husk of a once proud ship. Its crew butchered even as the surrender signal is sent out. Each life was more than centuries worth of training, undone by these tiny ships. And one by one, the shields fail on the glorious ships of the Grand Fleet, only to be pounced on by the endless swarm of Terran ships. Mad Terrans aboard their ships with their tiny weapons and cause massive damage internally, and slaughter the crews even with their insufficient weapons. As no ship in the Grand Admiral's fleet is prepared for boarding actions, such thoughts of boarding an enemy ship is considered mad and suicidal. But these Terrans are certainly both. Day 200 of the Battle of the Sol System. The Admiral had yet another week of restless sleep. His once mighty fleet now reduced to the 3 newest and largest ships. Their shields now draining faster as the ships focused on all the others swarm around theirs. The 3rd ship shields finally sputter and fail, and the swarm and ships begin to destroy it as well. The constant assault barely ceasing, even as 1,000 ships break away to deal damage to the ship. The crew rushing to the few landing craft, a desperate attempt to break through the swarm and retreat to safety of the flagship shields. But the moment the ship leaves the hangar of the ship, it is buffeted by 1,000,000 shots from all sides. Its shields nowhere near strong enough to endure, and the ship is shattered into a million pieces. The crew begin to despair, watching their comrades, whom they have known for countless eons, vanish into the constant assault. The Admiral finally decides that they have been beaten. He opens communications with the Terrans, sending a signal to the homeworld. "Are you here to surrender unconditionally?" The blasted human questions, a smug grin on its face as the Admiral holds a sigh of shame. "We are open to negotiations. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed.